Freight handling on a multi-species trade station isn't supposed to involve heroics. You clock in, you move boxes from here to there, you try not to think too hard about what's actually inside those boxes marked fragile organic materials, and you go home. Simple, boring, safe, that's the whole point. Freya had been living that beautiful, boring dream for 3 years aboard Luminous Harbor. And honestly, she was crushing it. Perfect attendance, 0 incident reports, and she'd mastered the art of looking busy while actually just playing puzzle games on her datapad. Peak human achievement, right there. The station itself was something out of a tourism brochure, assuming your idea of tourism involved contractual obligations and potential explosive decompression. Luminous Harbor, a massive wheel of interconnected modules spinning in neutral space, where species from across the galaxy gathered to trade, negotiate, and occasionally file strongly worded complaints with station management. Freya's role in this grand cosmic dance? Move cargo. Don't drop cargo. Don't ask what's in the cargo. Repeat until pension. Oh, and one more thing. Don't make eye contact with the Krell. The Krell? Right. Them. Picture what nightmares would look like if nightmares went to the gym religiously, and then got really into military discipline. That's the Krell. 8 feet of scaled muscle. Faces that looked like evolution had combined every apex predator in the universe and then added extra teeth, just for fun. Their eyes glowed amber, not metaphorically, actually glowed like they had headlights installed where their souls should be. Terrifying? Absolutely. But also, weirdly polite. They followed station protocols, never caused trouble, always paid their fees on time. The model citizen, if that citizen could probably rip through a reinforced bulkhead with their bare claws. Their whole culture was built on strength and honor, and this complex hierarchical thing that Freya had stopped trying to understand after the orientation video hit the 2-hour mark. What she did understand, the Krell were powerful. They knew it. Everyone else knew it. And the general galactic consensus was, let's all just be nice to the scary predator people, and maybe they won't conquer our homeworlds. Other species gave them space. Wide space. When a Krell walked down a corridor, foot traffic evaporated like morning dew. Freya had seen a mythic trader literally climb a wall once to avoid passing too close to a Krell shopping group. It would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. Station orientation had been very clear about the rules. Minimal eye contact with Krell, never touch them without explicit permission, and, this one was apparently important enough to repeat 5 times, absolutely never approach their young. The instructor had been super serious about that last one, though Freya thought it was kind of obvious. Who looks at baby predators and thinks, yes, I should definitely get closer to those? So Freya followed the rules, kept her head down, did her job, and treated the Krell like very dangerous furniture. It worked beautifully. For 3 years, it worked. Right up until the universe decided that Freya's boring, safe life was getting a rewrite. The shift started normally, or as normal as things got on Luminous Harbor, which meant organized chaos held together by duct tape and hope. Freya was stationed in Cargo Bay 12, datapad in hand, working through her checklist with the enthusiasm of someone counting grains of sand. The bay was enormous, one of those spaces that made you feel tiny and insignificant. Cathedral ceilings lost in shadow, enough floor space to park a fleet of shuttles, and industrial lighting that cast everything in sickly yellow tones. The air smelled like recycled oxygen, metal, and whatever spicy thing was leaking from the Ixelon food shipments 3 bays over. Other workers dotted the space. A couple of humans, one of those multi-armed mythic, who moved cargo like they were conducting an orchestra, and, yeah, a group of Krell near the far wall. Freya had clocked them immediately when she'd entered. 3 adults, standing with that unnaturally perfect stillness that the Krell had mastered, probably waiting for a shipment. Freya had made a mental note to stay on her side of the bay, maintain a nice healthy distance, and pretend they didn't exist. The system was foolproof. Except Freya hadn't noticed the 3 small shapes huddled behind a stack of containers about 50 feet from the adults. Krell young. Cubs. She spotted them by accident, movement in the corner of her eye while she was scanning a manifest. 3 small bodies, each about the size of a large dog, covered in scales that hadn't quite hardened into the armor plating their parents wore. Their glow was brighter than the adults, more yellow than amber, giving them an almost playful appearance. One was investigating a container latch with intense focus. Another was making these chirping sounds that might have been laughter. The third sat apart, tail curled around its legs, watching the others with an expression that screamed, "I am not involved in whatever they're doing." Freya felt a weird flutter in her chest. They were kind of adorable? In a still have teeth that could probably puncture steel way. But still. She looked away quickly. Not her problem. Not her business. The adult Krell were right there. They had it handled. Freya went back to her manifest, squinting at the screen, trying to remember if the next shipment was supposed to arrive in Bay 12 or 13. That's when every alarm in the station started screaming at once. Not the gentle, "Please be aware" chime. The full apocalyptic wail that meant something had gone catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. Freya's head snapped up as the lights strobed. Once, twice. The entire bay seemed to tilt sideways, like the station had been slapped by an invisible hand. Power. Core malfunction detected, a calm, synthetic voice announced, like it was commenting on the weather. All personnel proceed to emergency. The voice died mid-sentence. Then the explosion hit. Calling it an explosion felt inadequate. It was more like reality took a hammer to the face. A shock wave tore through Cargo Bay 12, originating from somewhere deep in the station's mechanical heart. The sound was physical, a wall of pressure that hit Freya's chest and squeezed. The floor bucked like a living thing, and suddenly Freya was airborne. She hit the deck hard, all the air leaving her lungs in one violent gasp. Her datapad went flying into the smoke that was already billowing through the bay. Somewhere behind her, a container the size of a small house tipped over with a sound like thunder. The lights died. Emergency systems kicked in half a second later, bathing everything in hellish red light. Freya's ears were ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out almost everything else. Almost. Because beneath the ringing, she could hear screaming, the groan of stressed metal, and the sharp crack of support beams giving way. Move. Get up. Emergency pods are 30 meters that way. Move. She pushed herself up on shaking arms, blinking against the smoke. The bay looked like something from a disaster movie. Containers scattered like toys, chunks of ceiling hanging by threads, sparks raining down like deadly snow. And then, cutting through everything else, she heard it. High-pitched, terrified. Unmistakably the sound of children screaming. Freya's head turned automatically, searching. Through the smoke and chaos, she spotted them. The 3 Krell cubs, huddled together near a tilted container, looking impossibly small. One was making that chirping sound again, but twisted into something desperate and afraid. Where were the adults? Her eyes tracked across the bay. There, on the opposite side, behind what was now a wall of wreckage and twisted metal. The adult Krell were trying to get through, one of them bellowing in rage, tearing at debris with claws that threw sparks. But the blockage was massive, and they weren't going to make it. not in time. Because above the cubs, swaying with each tremor that shook the station, was a cargo container the size of a shuttle. It hung from a support beam that was visibly bending, metal screaming under stress. When it fell, not if, when, those cubs would be paced. Freya's brain ran the numbers in maybe a second flat. Distance to the cubs, 30 feet, give or take. Distance to the emergency pods, 20 feet in the exact opposite direction. Chance of survival if she stayed here, dropping every second. Chance of survival if she tried to help. Laughably bad. The smart play was crystal clear. Run. Save herself. Let the Krell handle their own. Freya had always been terrible at making smart plays. Her legs were moving before her brain caught up, boots hammering against the deck as another shock wave rolled through. The bay. Smoke choked her lungs, heat pressed against her skin like a physical force, and some distant part of her mind was screaming that this was suicide, this was insane, this was... The cubs saw her coming. All 3 heads turned, 6 eyes going wide with what might have been shock. They froze. Pure instinct, the universal response when something unexpected charges at you. Freya didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Above the cubs, the support beam gave a shriek of tortured metal that meant seconds, maybe less. She hit them at full speed, arms wrapping around as many small-scaled bodies as she could grab, and threw herself forward in a tackle that would have made a football coach weep. They tumbled together, a tangle of limbs and tails and panic, and Freya twisted mid-fall to put her back between the cubs and whatever was coming. The beam snapped with a sound like a gunshot. Freya had maybe a heartbeat to think, well, this is definitely going to hurt. The container came down. It didn't hit her directly. Some piece of wreckage must have caught it, angled it just enough to keep it from crushing them all into jelly. But the shrapnel hit. Metal fragments, superheated and sharp as razors, tore into her back and legs. Something heavy slammed into her shoulder, and she felt bones crack like kindling. Pain. Incredible. All-consuming pain. But beneath her, pressed against her chest, the cubs were alive. She could feel them breathing, warm and terrified and whole. Worth it, she thought, half delirious. Totally worth. A second explosion, closer this time, lifted all of them like they weighed nothing. Freya felt herself flying, then crashing into a wall with force that knocked stars into her vision. Her head cracked against metal. The world tilted sideways, sound fading to a distant roar. But even as consciousness slipped away, she kept her arms locked around the small bodies beneath her. Protected. Safe. Her last thought before darkness took her was absurdly mundane. She was definitely going to miss her shift deadline. Then, nothing. Just silence. And the steady rhythm of 3 small heartbeats against her chest. Still beating. Still alive. Still safe. Mission accomplished, she supposed. Everything else could wait. Waking up hurt. That was Freya's first coherent thought. And honestly, it was generous to call it coherent. It was more like a full-body scream of protest, translated into words. Everything hurt. Her back, her legs, her shoulder, her head. Parts of her she didn't even know could hurt. Even her hair hurt, which seemed excessive. The second thought was, why am I not dead? That seemed like a reasonable question, given that her last memory involved a cargo container trying to turn her into a pancake. The fact that she was capable of having thoughts at all felt like a cosmic, clerical error. Slowly, carefully, like she was made of glass that might shatter at any moment. Freya cracked open her eyes. White ceiling. Soft lighting. The antiseptic smell of a medical bay mixed with something else, something organic and musky that she didn't recognize. The gentle hum of medical equipment surrounded her, punctuated by the occasional beep that probably meant she was still alive. Medical bay. She was in the station's medical bay. That was good? Better than being smeared across Cargo Bay 12, certainly. Freya tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder, sharp enough to make her gasp. Her back felt like someone had used it for target practice, and her legs. "Do not move." The voice came from her left, deep and resonant, with that particular growling quality that made Freya's hindbrain scream, "Predator!" before her conscious mind could catch up. She turned her head slowly, everything slowly now, and found herself looking at a Krell. Not just any Krell. This one was different. Smaller than the warriors she'd seen, maybe only 6 feet tall, with scales that were darker, almost black, marked with pale patterns that looked like ritual scarring. The eyes still glowed amber, but softer somehow, more focused than threatening. The Krell was doing something to a medical console, long clawed fingers moving with surprising delicacy across the controls. "You suffered significant trauma," the Krell continued, not looking at Freya. "Fractured shoulder, lacerations across your back and legs, concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and extensive bruising. You should not have survived." A pause. "Yet you did." Freya's mouth was dry as sand. She tried to speak, managed something that might have been words in some language, somewhere. The Krell finally turned, and Freya got her first clear look at the face. Definitely female, if she was reading the features right, more refined than the warriors, less brutally angular. There was something in those glowing eyes that might have been curiosity? Concern? Hard to tell with a species that could probably smell fear. "I am Ulthan," the Krell said. "Lifebinder. What you would call healer." The word came out awkward, like she'd had to search for the translation. "I have been tending to you for 2 station cycles." 2 days. She'd been unconscious for 2 days. "The cubs?" Freya's voice came out as a croak, barely recognizable. Ulthan's head tilted, a gesture that might have been surprise. "The young ones are unharmed. Because of you." She moved closer to the bed, and every instinct Freya had screamed at her to run, but running wasn't exactly an option when you were held together with medical tape and hope. "You shielded them with your body. Took injuries that would have killed them. Why? Why?" Freya tried to organize her thoughts through the haze of pain and medication. Why had she done it? She didn't even like kids particularly. Human kids, anyway. What had possessed her to throw herself at 3 predator babies during an explosion? "They were scared," Freya said finally, because it was the truth, even if it sounded stupid. "They needed help." Ulthan stared at her for a long moment, those amber eyes unblinking. Then she made a sound, low, rumbling, almost like a purr, but deeper. "Most species run from our young. They see claws, teeth, predator. They see threat." Another pause. "You saw children." "Well, they are children, aren't they?" The purring sound got louder. "Was that laughter?" "Yes, they are. And because you saw them, you live. High Commander Fax has ordered your protection and care. No expense spared." Freya blinked. "High Commander? Who now?" "The sire of the young ones you saved. He wishes to speak with you." Ulthan turned back to the console, making adjustments. "I informed him you would wake soon. He has been insistent." "Oh, fantastic." Freya had apparently saved the children of someone important, which meant politics, which meant her nice, quiet life was about to get very complicated. She'd signed up for freight handling, not interspecies incidents. Can I refuse? Freya asked, already knowing the answer. No. Yeah, figured. Ulthan administered something through an IV line that made the pain recede to a dull roar, which was nice of her. He arrives in moments. Be respectful. Frex is intense. That seemed like an understatement for a species that considered intense a baseline personality trait. Freya didn't have time to prepare herself. Not that any amount of preparation would have helped, because the door to the medical bay opened with a hiss, and High Commander Fax walked in. Walked wasn't the right word. Stalked, prowled, entered like he owned the room, the station, and possibly the entire sector. He was massive, easily 8.5 feet tall, built like someone had taken a tank and given it legs. His scales were darker than Ulthan's, almost charcoal, with pale scars crisscrossing his arms and chest. He wore some kind of formal military harness, dark metal adorned with symbols Freya couldn't read. His eyes locked onto her, and Freya felt her heart rate spike so fast the medical equipment started beeping in alarm. Ulthan made a soft clicking sound. Peace, Frex. She is fragile. I am aware. Frex's voice was like grinding stones, deep enough that Freya felt it in her chest. He approached the bed slowly, each step deliberate, controlled. When he was close enough that Freya could count the scars on his arms, he stopped. Then, moving with unexpected grace for something so large, he dropped to one knee beside her bed, bringing his eyes level with hers. You are Freya, he said. Not a question, a statement. That's me. Yes. Her voice sounded tiny, even to her own ears. You saved my children. Yeah, I guess I did. You sustained grievous injury protecting them. You could have died. You should have died. Frex leaned closer, and Freya could see details now, the intricate patterns of his scales, the way his pupils contracted to slits in the light, the rows of teeth behind his lips. Why did you do this? Why did everyone keep asking her that? Like there was some grand philosophical reason instead of just, babies were in danger and my brain shut off. They were going to get crushed, Freya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I couldn't just leave them. Frex stared at her. Just stared, unblinking, for what felt like an eternity. Then he made a sound, low, rumbling, building in his chest until it filled the room. For one terrified moment, Freya thought he was growling at her. But Ulthan was making the same sound, softer. And if Freya had to guess, and she was definitely guessing, it was laughter. She says it like it is simple, Frex said to Ulthan, his voice carrying something that might have been wonder. Like anyone would have done the same. Most would not have, Ulthan replied quietly. Most run from our young Frex. You know this. Frex turned back to Freya, and now there was something different in his eyes. Something that looked almost like respect? Your actions have been broadcast across Krell networks. You are known, Freya of the humans. Your courage has been witnessed. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Freya's stomach dropped. Broadcast? What do you mean, broadcast? The cargo bay had surveillance, Ulthan explained, something apologetic in her tone. The footage of you shielding the young ones has been shared among our people. You have become well known. Viral, Freya muttered. I went viral among the scary predator aliens. Great. That's just great. Frex made that rumbling sound again. You fear fame? I fear complications. I liked being invisible. Freya tried to sit up, failed, winced. Look, I'm glad the cubs are okay. That's all that matters. Can we just forget this happened? I'll go back to freight handling. Everyone goes back to normal? The look Frex gave her suggested that normal had left the building and wasn't coming back. There is something you must understand, Frex said, his tone shifting to something more formal. Among my people, there exists an ancient law, the right of the small. Any being who protects Krell young at great personal risk is granted status. Honor. Protection. Freya's brain was struggling to keep up. Status? You are named Guardian, Frex continued. You are granted rank above Krell warriors. Your safety becomes our priority. Your name becomes legend. The medical equipment started beeping again as Freya's heart rate spiked. I'm sorry, what? No. No. I just moved some boxes. I don't want to be a legend. I don't want rank. I want to go back to being nobody. Too late, Ulthan said, not unkindly. You protected the young. The law is absolute. This is insane. Freya looked between them, searching for some sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything. Anyone would have done the same thing. No. Frex's voice was firm, final. They would not have. Most species flee from our children, terrified of what they might become. You ran toward them. You placed yourself between them and death. He stood, towering over her bed. There is a human saying, yes? Actions speak louder than words. Your actions have spoken, Freya. The galaxy has heard them. Freya wanted to argue, wanted to explain that it wasn't heroism, just reflex, just stupidity. But the words died in her throat because Frex was looking at her with something that transcended species. Gratitude. Pure, genuine gratitude. My children live because of you, he said quietly. That is not nothing. That is everything. Before Freya could respond, the door hissed open again. 3 small shapes burst into the room with the kind of energy that suggested they'd been forcibly restrained until this very moment. The cubs. Jin reached her first, chittering excitedly, followed immediately by Multis and Keth. They scrambled up onto her bed. Ulthan made a sound of protest but didn't stop them. And suddenly Freya was surrounded by small, scaled bodies, warm and surprisingly soft, all trying to touch her at once. Guardian Mother. Jin's voice was high-pitched, the words accented but clear. You wake! You wake! Freya stared. Did he just call me? They have imprinted, Ulthan said, resignation in her voice. Cubs form bonds with their protectors. You saved them. In their minds, you are now their guardian mother. Multis was curled against Freya's side, purring, actually purring, like the galaxy's most dangerous cat. Keth had claimed her other side, while Jin was investigating the medical equipment with intense curiosity. I don't, Freya started, but stopped. Because despite the pain, despite the insanity of the situation, despite everything, they were warm. And they'd been terrified in that cargo bay, and she'd kept them safe. And now they felt safe with her. Damn it. The galaxy has changed for you, Freya, Frex said, and there was something almost gentle in his voice now. Your world will come calling. Earth will want to claim you as their own. The Galactic Council will want to understand what this means. And my people, he gestured to the cubs, my people will name you Guardian of the Small. It is done. What if I say no? Freya asked weakly, even though she already knew. You cannot refuse what you have already earned. Frex moved toward the door, then paused. Rest. Heal. And when you are strong, we will speak of what comes next. He left, Ulthan following after giving Freya one last unreadable look. The door closed. Freya lay there, surrounded by 3 purring predator babies who thought she was their mother, staring at the ceiling and wondering how her boring, safe life had turned into this. This is fine, she told the ceiling. Everything is totally fine. Multis nuzzled closer, making a contented sound. Freya sighed and carefully, very carefully, because everything still hurt, put an arm around the small, scaled body. Yeah, she was absolutely doomed. The first message from Earth arrived 6 hours after Freya woke up, which was honestly slower than she'd expected. Humanity's bureaucracy must have been having an off day. It came through on her personal comm, which someone had helpfully placed on the table beside her medical bed, with the kind of official chime that meant, "Ignore this at your own peril." Freya considered ignoring it anyway, but Moltis was asleep on her chest and shifting might wake her, so she reached over and opened the message. Priority transmission. Earth Diplomatic Corps to Freya, Freight Handler, Luminous Harbor Station, RE. Recent interspecies incident and media relations. Oh, this was going to be good. The message went on for 3 pages. 3 pages of diplomatic word salad that basically boiled down to, "Congratulations on not dying. And also, you're now Earth's poster child for human-alien relations. Please report for debriefing and PR coaching immediately." There was a list of interview requests, 17 of them, from news organizations Freya had actually heard of, which was terrifying. Apparently, the footage of her yeeting herself at 3 Krell cubs had made it to Earth's networks, and humanity had collectively lost its mind. "Guardian Angel of the Galaxy," one headline read. "Human freight worker achieves legendary status among predator species," claimed another. Her personal favorite, "Local woman too stubborn to die, accidentally becomes interstellar hero." That last one was from a tabloid, but still, points for accuracy. Freya deleted the message without responding, then deleted the next 5 messages that were basically identical. Her inbox was a nightmare, and she'd only been conscious for a few hours. This was going to get so much worse before it got better. Problem. Ulthan had returned, carrying what looked like a tray of food. Actual food, not the nutrient paste the medical bay usually dispensed. "Earth wants me to do interviews," Freya said flatly. "They want to parade me around like a trained performing seal. Look, everyone, humans are brave and selfless, and definitely not a species that still can't agree on basic climate policy." Ulthan set the tray down, her expression unreadable. "You do not wish for recognition? I wish for my old life back, the boring one, where my biggest problem was whether to have the mystery meat or the mystery vegetables in the cafeteria." Freya carefully shifted Moltis to one side. The cub grumbled but didn't wake, and looked at the food. Something that might have been bread, some kind of protein she didn't recognize, and a bowl of what smelled like soup. Is this safe for humans? I consulted the dietary database. It will not kill you. Ringing endorsement. Freya picked up the bread thing anyway. She was starving, and at this point, food poisoning seemed like a minor concern. How bad is it out there? The political stuff, I mean. Ulthan settled into a chair that looked far too small for her frame. The Galactic Council has requested a formal hearing. They wish to understand the implications of a human being granted guardian status by the Krell. Many species are concerned. Concerned how? The Krell are powerful, feared. If humans gain favor with my people, the balance shifts. Ulthan's claws tapped against her knee, a rhythmic clicking. The Ixelon are particularly vocal. They believe this sets a dangerous precedent. Freya took a bite of the bread. It tasted like cardboard mixed with hope, which was better than expected. Let me get this straight. I saved 3 kids from getting pancaked, and now there's a political crisis? Yes, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Politics often is. Ulthan leaned forward. The Ixelon ambassador has requested to speak with you, Quilmith. He is persistent. As if on cue, the door chimed. Ulthan's eyes narrowed, which was impressive considering they were already predator-slit. "Speak of the void, and it manifests." The door opened to reveal something that looked like a very tall, very thin deer had decided to evolve sapience, and a fondness for formal robes. Quilmith was easily 9 feet tall, but maybe 80 pounds soaking wet, with large dark eyes, delicate features, and the kind of nervous energy that suggested he'd really rather be anywhere else. Ixelon, herbivore species, professional diplomats, allergic to conflict, and absolutely terrified of the Krell, which made his presence here, in the medical bay, where Freya was currently being used as a pillow by predator cubs, extremely awkward. "Honored Freya," Quilmith said, his voice reedy and accented. His eyes kept darting to the sleeping cubs, then away, like he was trying very hard not to acknowledge their existence. "I apologize for the intrusion. Might I have a moment of your time? Do I have a choice?" "Not particularly." He entered the room like he was stepping through a minefield, each movement careful and calculated. "I come on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have concerns about recent developments." Freya gestured at herself, currently bedbound and covered in sleeping Krell babies. "You mean this development?" "Precisely." Quilmith wrung his hands, all 4 of them, which was 2 more than necessary in Freya's opinion. "You must understand, the Krell granting Guardian status is unprecedented. The last recorded instance was 300 cycles ago, and it sparked a territorial conflict that lasted decades. So you're worried I'm going to start a war? We are worried about what your elevation means for galactic stability. The Krell are already a dominant power. If they form closer ties with humanity, if Earth gains privileged status—" He trailed off, meaningful silence doing the heavy lifting. Freya was getting really tired of people treating her like a political chess piece. "I didn't ask for this. I just reacted. Anyone would have done the same." But they did not. Quilmith took another step closer, lowering his voice. "That is what makes this significant. You acted where others would hesitate. You protected. Krell young despite every instinct screaming danger. That is not nothing, Freya. That is exceptional. It was stupid, perhaps, but it was also brave." Quilmith's large eyes fixed on her, earnest and pleading. "I ask you to consider declining the Guardian status, for the sake of stability, for peace." Ulthan made a sound like grinding gravel. "The right of the small cannot be declined. It is granted by action, not choice. Surely exceptions can be made." "No exceptions." Frex's voice cut through the room like a blade. He'd appeared in the doorway, silent as death despite his size. How something that large moved that quietly was a question for physics. "The law is absolute, herbivore. Freya is guardian. This is not negotiable." Quilmith actually took a step back, which put him dangerously close to the wall. "High Commander, I meant no disrespect. Yet you offer it anyway by suggesting my people's most sacred law can be ignored for political convenience." Fax moved into the room, and Quilmith looked like he wanted to phase through the bulkhead. "My children live because of Freya. That debt is not erasable. The honor is not retractable. But the Council can voice concerns at the formal hearing. Until then, leave my guardian in peace. She heals." It wasn't a request. Quilmith fled, there was no other word for it, practically falling over himself to exit the medical bay. The door hissed shut behind him, and Fax made a satisfied rumbling sound. "You enjoy terrifying him," Ulthan observed. "Immensely." Fax turned to Freya. "The Ixelon fear change. They will pressure you to refuse what cannot be refused. Ignore them. And if I don't want to be a political symbol? Freya asked. What then? Fax considered this, his glowing eyes thoughtful. Then be what you already are, someone who protects the small. The rest, he gestured dismissively, the rest is noise. Chin chose that moment to wake up, yawning to display an impressive array of baby teeth, and immediately launched into an excited explanation of something in rapid Krell that Freya couldn't follow. Maltese stirred, grumbling. Keth appeared from somewhere under the blankets. Freya looked at them, these tiny, terrifying, adorable creatures who'd decided she was their person, and felt something shift in her chest. Maybe Fax was right. Maybe the politics didn't matter. Maybe the only thing that mattered was that 3 kids were alive who wouldn't have been. Yeah, she said quietly. Just noise. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew the noise was about to get a whole lot louder. The assassin came on a Friday, which felt like poor planning. Everyone knew Friday was a terrible day for murder. Too many witnesses finishing up their shifts, too much traffic in the corridors, and honestly, who had the energy for assassination attempts right before the weekend? Freya had been out of the medical bay for 3 days, cleared by Ulthen with strict instructions to not do anything heroic for at least a month. She'd been attempting to follow those instructions. Really, she had. But apparently the universe had other plans. She was in one of Luminous Harbor's public commons, a large open area where different species mingled, ate, and pretended they all got along. The cubs had insisted on coming with her. They insisted on everything now, following her like scaled shadows, and Freya had given up trying to leave them behind. Jin was currently investigating a decorative plant with intense scientific focus. Maltese was napping against Freya's leg, and Keth was people-watching with the kind of judgment only a child could muster. It was almost normal, almost peaceful. Then the crowd started parting, that universal signal that something dangerous was approaching. The Krell that stepped into view was massive, even by Krell standards. Muscles on muscles, covered in scars that told stories of violence, wearing the kind of armor that suggested he wasn't here for a friendly chat. His eyes glowed brighter than most, almost white-hot, and when he moved, people scrambled to get out of his way. He was staring directly at Freya. "Oh, this isn't good," Freya muttered. Chin's head snapped up, followed immediately by his siblings. All 3 cubs moved, fast, positioning themselves between Freya and the approaching warrior. Their scales bristled, making them look slightly larger, and they made sounds that were surprisingly threatening for beings that still tripped over their own tails. The warrior, Uxor, Freya's brain supplied unhelpfully, because apparently the news feeds had been very thorough about the Pure Claw faction and their members, stopped about 10 feet away. His voice carried across the commons like thunder. "You are the human, the false guardian." Freya's heart was trying to escape through her ribcage, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm Freya. I don't know about the false part. You dishonor our laws by existing." Uxor's claws extended, each one easily 6 inches long and sharp enough to cut through steel. Probably. Freya really didn't want to find out. "A human cannot be guardian. Only Krell protect Krell. This is our way. Look, I didn't ask for... Your species is weak, soft, prey." He took a step forward, and the cubs made warning sounds that would have been adorable if the situation wasn't absolutely terrifying. "You have no right to our honors, no place in our traditions." The commons had gone silent, everyone watching. Station security was nowhere to be seen. Of course not, because that would be helpful. Other Krell were present, but none moved to intervene. This was apparently Krell business, and everyone else was smart enough to stay out of it. Freya should have been terrified. She was terrified. But she was also getting really, really tired of people telling her what she couldn't be. "You're right," she said, and Uxor's eyes narrowed in surprise. "I'm human, weak and soft and absolutely prey. Compared to you, I would lose a fight against you in about 3 seconds, and that's being generous. Then you admit, I'm not finished." Freya stood up slowly, careful not to jostle Maltese. The cub immediately moved to her side, growling. "I didn't ask to be guardian. I didn't plan to throw myself at your cubs during an explosion. I didn't think about honor or tradition or any of it. I just saw 3 kids who were going to die. And I moved. That's it. That's the whole story." Uxor's claws flexed. "That changes nothing." "Doesn't it?" Freya gestured at the cubs, who were still maintaining their protective stance. "They're alive. They're safe. Isn't that what actually matters? Or is your pride more important than living children?" The slap came out of nowhere. Not physical, but the impact was the same. Uxor's expression shifted, something flickering behind the rage. But before he could respond, a new voice cut through the commons. "You challenge my guardian, Uxor of the Pure Claw?" Frex had arrived, and he'd brought friends. 6 Krell warriors in full ceremonial armor, each one radiating the kind of controlled violence that made smart people find somewhere else to be. The commons started emptying fast. Uxor turned, and for the first time, Freya saw something like uncertainty cross his face. "High Commander, I seek only to restore proper order. This human saved my children when none other would." Frex moved forward, each step deliberate. "You claim to honor tradition, yet you would deny the oldest law we have? The right of the small exists for moments exactly like this. She is not Krell. The law does not specify species." Frex was close now, towering over even Uxor. "It specifies action, protection of our young at personal cost. Freya met those requirements. Your argument is with our ancestors who wrote the law, not with her." Uxor's whole body was tense, coiled like a spring. His eyes darted between Frex, the cubs, and Freya. "The Pure Claw will not accept this. Our bloodlines should not be diluted by— Look at them." Frex's voice was quiet now, but it carried more weight than his earlier thunder. He pointed at the cubs, still arranged protectively around Freya. "Look at my children. See how they stand. See what they learned from her." Uxor looked, and Freya saw it, the moment it clicked. The cubs weren't just standing near her. They'd copied her stance from the cargo bay, bodies positioned to shield, to protect. They'd learned from her sacrifice, and now they were trying to return it. "The small ones choose their guardian," Uxor said slowly, like the words were being pulled from somewhere deep. His posture shifted, the aggression bleeding out of him. "The law is older than our pride." He stepped back, once, twice. Then he dropped to one knee, not to Frex, but to Freya. "I apologize, Guardian. My anger blinded me to truth." Freya had no idea what to say. Okay?" Uxor rose, gave Frex a formal nod, and left the commons. The tension broke like a snapped wire, and Freya's legs decided they were done holding her up. She sat down hard, and immediately had 3 cubs climbing into her lap, chirping concerned questions. Frex settled beside her. Well, settled was relative when you were that large, and made that rumbling sound that might have been laughter. "You handled that well. I almost died, but you did not. You spoke truth, and truth has power." He watched his children fussing over Freya, making sure she was okay. They love you, you know. Not as guardian, as family. Freya looked at the three small faces, all worried amber eyes and chittering concern, and felt her chest tighten. Yeah, I'm getting that. Earth has named you Guardian of the Small, Fax continued. The title is spreading. Other species hear the story and wonder. If the fierce Krell accept a human as guardian, what does that mean? It means I'm never going back to freight handling, doesn't it? Correct. Over the next weeks, something unexpected happened. Other species started bringing their young to Freya during dangerous station operations. Not many at first, just a few cautious parents who figured if she was good enough for the Krell, maybe she was trustworthy. But word spread. Freya found herself accidentally running what one human journalist called the galaxy's most intimidating daycare. She had a mythic infant who liked to hide in her hair. 2 Ixelon fawns who followed her everywhere, making soft chirping sounds. And of course, the 3 Krell cubs who'd started this whole mess. She operated independently, refused Earth's attempts to make her an official diplomat, rejected the Krell's offer of a formal military position, told the Galactic Council they could file their concerns in triplicate, and shoved them somewhere uncomfortable. She was just Freya, guardian of the small, protector of the vulnerable, and absolutely, completely, utterly done with heroics. 2 months after the explosion, she stood in her new quarters. Station management had upgraded her after the 5th interspecies delegation showed up, watching the stars through the viewport. Chin was asleep across her shoulders like a scaly scarf. Maltese and Keth were curled together on the couch. The mythic infant was snoring softly in a basket. The Ixelon fawns were nested in blankets. I used to haul freight, Freya told the stars. Now I'm apparently the galaxy's weirdest babysitter. The universe has a sick sense of humor. Maltese made a sleepy chirping sound. Yeah, I know. Worth it. And somehow, impossibly, it was. The small ones chose their guardian, and their guardian chose them right back.